The people who once walked this ancient land bequeathed to us a timeless legacy, the Holy Bible. The book we know today may have been the result of a fusion of stories, ideas, traditions, and chronologies, woven together over a span of 1,000 years or more, encompassing the period between the Exodus from Egypt and the life of Christ. The Bible is the world's perennial bestseller, with close on 100 million new copies printed each year. To trace its lineage is to embark on an extraordinary journey. But understandably, it is a quest not without controversy, for some of our deepest and most passionate convictions are intertwined with this book, held to be sacred by so many. What proportion of the Bible contains the sacred word of God, and how much of it is the work of mortal mind? Do the stories cross the boundaries separating legend from history? Are all the original books still within the Bible, or have any of the ancient texts been lost? These are questions that have puzzled the scholar. But the heroic deeds of ordinary men and women, a pageantry of prophets, priests, villains, heroes, and kings who played a role in creating the Bible, are separated from us by an immeasurable period of time. Only their ghosts and echoes linger. To trace their path, our journey of discovery into the origins of both the Old and the New Testaments begins here in the Middle East. The region still holds many secrets of those long-gone days, but the landscape is frustratingly silent on the mystery of how the most revered book in human history came to be written. Occasionally, the sands yield a tiny piece of a puzzle that sheds some light on the biblical narrative. But it is to the texts themselves that the scholar must turn to learn how and when the Bible came into being. Locked within these words are the answers to the origin of the Holy Book. The task is a difficult one. Centuries of translation and editing may have left us with little semblance of the original writings, especially regarding the oldest of the Bible's books, the Pentateuch, known as the Hebrew Torah, or the 5 books of Moses. Moses is said to have received the holy words from God here on Mount Sinai during the Exodus from Egypt. The Bible tells us that Moses himself wrote them down and passed them on to the people.
Religious tradition has taught us that God revealed it to Moses at Sinai. And yet, no matter how much we grapple with the problem, it's very hard not to see some aspect of human interference or intervention or perhaps literary activity in this massive set of texts that we call the Torah.
The Torah itself never exactly claims that Moses wrote all of it. There's a section that says Moses wrote down these words, but it never says, and all the other words in this book. The belief originated in pre-rabbinic and rabbinic times, the first couple of centuries BCE, for lots of reasons, not the least of which was you can't establish the authority of the book any better than saying God wrote it.
The question of who wrote the Bible has often prompted a defensive response from church and synagogue. From a traditional viewpoint, the holy texts are sacrosanct words, imparted or inspired by the divine. Understandably, even now, to many, the authorship of the Bible remains beyond doubt.
We believe that the Torah was written by the hand of Moses, but dictated to him by God himself in a totally divine manner. No different than you would dictate a letter to a secretary.
God could have used angels, God could have written it himself, God could have spoken it into written form. He chose, being the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent one, to use human beings since his message is to man. Therefore, whether Moses writing the Pentateuch, or Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John writing the Gospels, or any of the 40 men and women who were instrumental, each of them, under divine inspiration, wrote verbatim, totally verbatim, as God instructed, but through their own personality.
It is believed that the communal campfire was the stage around which the first biblical stories were transmitted. Histories and genealogies were passed down by word of mouth, told and retold many times. Epic sagas of conflict, deliverance, and redemption were reenacted, with accounts of ancestral contact with the divine conveyed verbally from generation to generation. The Bible is divided into two distinct sections. The first is the so-called Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible. In it are the 5 books of Moses, from Genesis through Deuteronomy, also known as the Law. Next are the history books, or the prophets, including Joshua, Judges, Samuel, and Kings. Finally, there are the writings, which include the book of Psalms, Proverbs, Lamentations, and Chronicles. 39 works in all. The New Testament, the texts that deal with the life and teachings of Jesus Christ, comprise 27 books, divided into the 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Then the Acts of the Apostles and the letters. And finally, the book of Revelation. But these are not the only religious texts. They are merely those that were canonized or accepted as worthy of inclusion in the Bible by various ecclesiastical authorities throughout the centuries. A volume of books known as the Apocrypha is sometimes included as an addendum to the Bible. These books, encompassing prophecies, poems, and histories, were at one time included in the Hebrew Bible, but were dropped from the official canon just before the Christian era. Any quest for original authorship should begin with the foundation of the entire structure. So the focus has invariably been on the earliest texts, on the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of Moses. As scholars began to plumb the rich depth of the biblical narrative, astonishing patterns began to emerge. Clearly, the texts seem to contain a multitude of different writing styles. Could they be the work of many minds, many authors, many contributors? If so, who were they? And is it possible that the Word of God is being revealed in all of their versions? A gradual revelation still going on. When Muhammad Adib, a young Arab boy in search of a lost goat, stumbles across a dusty cache of pottery jars in a cave near Qumran in 1947, he stuns the world. This is the oldest and most fabulous biblical treasure ever found, the Dead Sea Scrolls.
The discovery of the library on the Dead Sea, of all of this material, which we call Dead Sea Scrolls, has been crucial to our understanding of the Bible and the nature of it and who wrote it and when and how and why and what. Because this library revealed a piece, at least, of every book in the Bible, except Esther, in a manuscript which was 1,000 years older than the oldest Hebrew manuscript we ever had.